Good day, and welcome to the Economist Unpacked, your ultimate source for this week's most crucial stories from The Economist in London. In this episode, we will delve into the future of fertility, scrutinize El Salvador's autocratic president, and assess America's economy. Our first story today is the future of fertility, from IVF to IVG. This is a deep dive into the evolving world of fertility technology, a field that's advancing at an unprecedented pace and changing lives in the process. In today's world, with declining birth rates and couples choosing to have children later in life, assisted fertility has become more important than ever before. Many countries are below replacement level birth rates, with South Korea leading the pack at a miserly 0.84 children per woman. Japan, the world's canary in the mineshaft, has had a declining population since 2010. By making baby making more affordable, effective, and accessible, nations and couples will be able to have the family sizes they truly want. In vitro fertilization, or IVF, has been a beacon of hope for millions of people worldwide since its inception in the late 1970s.
It's a process that involves fertilizing an egg with sperm outside the body, then implanting the embryo into the uterus.
But it's a journey fraught with physical discomfort and emotional strain. It's not uncommon for it to require multiple cycles to succeed, each one bringing its own roller coaster of hope and disappointment. Since 1991, almost 400,000 children have been born in Britain through IVF, with 1.3 million cycles being administered, a hit rate of just 30%. Hopes that this may all be changing with the development of in vitro gametogenesis, or IVG. IVG involves creating eggs and sperm from stem cells in the lab, bypassing the needs for traditional gametes. Rather than allowing genes to create the necessary body functions, such as toenails or skin, IVG allows scientists to recode the genes to create almost any type of cell. This has the potential to revolutionize fertility treatments and expand options for individuals and couples struggling with infertility. In March this year, Japanese scientists were able to breed 8 healthy mice pups by taking the sperm of one rat and combining it with DNA taken from another male rat's tail. This innovation opens the door up for homosexual couples, for example, to have children sharing both fathers' DNA, or allow trans individuals to transition without risking their fertility. While these innovations are promising, don't expect them to be available anytime soon. Mr. Krisolov, the boss of a US company called Conception, believes that a proof of concept for human IVG eggs may be available in a year or two, but others in the scientific community are far more hesitant. They are at least a generation, if not two, away from being available to the public, says Amanda Clark, a biologist at UCLA who studies IVG and future fertility. But these advancements have multiple hurdles, not least a hefty price. The cost of IVF can run into the tens of thousands of dollars already, making it inaccessible for most. And with IVG still in its infancy, its potential cost remains a big question mark. It's a stark reminder that while science may be advancing, it's often those with the deepest pockets who benefit first. And then there are the ethical and societal implications. The potential for genetic editing and selecting embryos with specific traits opens up a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas. Only 5% of rats bred using IVG in Japan are healthy, compared to around 70% of naturally conceived rats. Many countries have laws and ethical requirements around genetically engineering humans, and while it has been 30 years since Dolly the sheep was cloned, the supply of human mini-me's remain at zero. Ethical concerns around assisted fertility are not limited to IVG. While there has been a liberalization of regulations in some of the West, it has certainly not been universal. The Czech Republic and Italy only allow for heterosexual couples, while in Japan, the treatment is reserved only for married couples. Gays need not apply. Surrogacy, where a fertilized egg is grown in the body of a different woman's womb, is allowed in some countries, such as Australia, provided that there is no payment provided to the surrogate at any point in the journey. Breeding embryos for disease is allowed in many EU countries, whereas selecting for gender is almost universally banned. Navigating these patchworks of laws requires a global presence and very deep pockets. Tom and James, a homosexual couple in California, needed eggs from Ukraine, a surrogate from Nepal, and scientists from Israel to be able to conceive their daughter back in 2020. The world of fertility technology has a long way to go, but it should be a priority for scientists and for governments. The ability to reduce or even cure inheritable diseases would be a major win for humanity, as would expanding family creation to non-traditional couples. For many people, children are seen as a gift from God. In the future, it may be a gift from science. Our next story takes us to El Salvador and how its 41-year-old president is rolling back democracy to thunderous applause and 90% approval ratings. It is enough to make aspiring despots, from Africa to the Middle East, salivate. In a small Central American country of 6.3 million people, Bukele has made a name for himself by cracking down on gang violence on an absolutely unprecedented scale. Since his election in 2019, Bukele has implemented a strategy that has seen over 71,000 people, equivalent to around 7% of male Salvadorians aged 14 to 29, rounded up and put into prison. El Salvador now locks up a higher share of its population than any other country and is currently building another prison, the world's largest. Bukelele's crackdown began in earnest in March 2022, following a weekend where 87 people were murdered. He declared a state of emergency, allowing the police to arrest anyone suspected of gang ties, even if the only evidence was a tattoo or an anonymous tip-off. Businesses are opening in neighborhoods that were once gang-controlled. In 2016, a study found that 16% of GDP was lost due to gang violence. It's not just the economy that is improving. The murder rate has plummeted from 51 per 100,000, placing it in the top 10 most dangerous countries in the world in 2018, to 8, slightly above the United States. The majority of Salvadorans are reportedly delighted with the results. And the popularity of Mr. Bukele has soared.
Porque así pues ya uno puede caminar con tranquilidad, sus hijos están más tranquilos, ¿verdad? Entonces gracias a Dios con el régimen, sí, para mí está bueno eso.
As the Economist reports, this war on gangs is not without downsides. Firstly, many innocent people have been incarcerated. Untold numbers of innocent people are locked away, with their families huddled outside the prison gates, desperate to assist. The vast majority of gang members who are in jail have not been tried. While El Salvador promises to eventually give these men their day in court, the wheels of justice move slowly. Secondly, it has given Bukele an excuse to accumulate extraordinary powers. Journalists who criticize the law or provoke so-called anxiety can face years in prison. He is nearing the end of his first term, and while the Constitution prohibits consecutive terms, he is most certainly going to install a placeholder president for a few months before returning to power. A third term, also prohibited by the Constitution, appears a very firm possibility. Perhaps worst of all, he is showing a playbook to other nations with high crime and weak institutions. In November, Honduras declared a state of emergency due to gangs. In Guatemala, a leading presidential candidate wants to build 2 mega prisons. Further south, in Ecuador, a wildcard presidential candidate is shot to fame by flying over the country in a helicopter to the soundtrack of Top Gun while declaring that the party is over for gang. Outside the region, nations from South Africa to Syria will be watching closely. Our final story today is looking at the economic landscape in the United States, where the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates at the fastest pace since the early 1980s. While some economists argue that this is necessary to quell inflation, others worry that the Fed has already gone too far and the further economic pain is completely unnecessary. However, there's a third possibility that's gaining traction: the idea that the Fed is getting things just right and that the economy will slow and inflation will drop without causing a recession, a phenomenon known as a soft landing. This was, until recently, seen as nearly impossible, but the odds are shifting. Since March 2022, the Fed has lifted short-term interest rates from 0% to 5%. Such rapid jumps usually go hand in hand with recessions. However, the American labour market has remained resilient. The unemployment rate sits at just 3.6%, a smidgen above a 5-decade low. America has added new jobs for 30 consecutive months now, lifting total employment to about its pre-pandemic levels. Economists had believed that there was a short-term trade-off between jobs and prices, a relationship known as the Phillips curve. The current situation in the US is challenging this belief. The US economy has been boosted by government spending and private sector investment. America is running a budget deficit worth over 5% of GDP, and spending on manufacturing facilities is up 70% this year. In real terms, compared with pre-pandemic levels, this is what is hitting a record high. However, it's crucial to note that a soft landing does not equate to roaring growth. What is needed to help bring inflation to heel is a period, potentially a long one, of subdued growth, which would lower the economic temperature. Our final story is something different: the summer movie season. On one side, we have the brooding genius, J. Robert Oppenheimer, played by the enigmatic Cillian Murphy, wrestling with the creation of the atomic bomb in the depths of a New Mexico lab. On the other, we have the ever-radiant Barbie, brought to life by the effervescent Margot Robbie, navigating existential crises in her pink paradise. Two films, Oppenheimer and Barbie, are the talk of the town, sparking a flurry of internet memes, trailer remixes, and heated debates about which cinematic to dive into first. Oppenheimer, the brainchild of Hollywood's resident mad scientist Christopher Nolan, is a deep dive into the psyche of one of history's most paradoxical figures. Meanwhile, Barbie, directed by the brilliant Greta Gerwig, is a whimsical journey that playfully critiques the history of the world's most famous doll. To face the realities of our world, these films present a choice: the stark realism of Oppenheimer's world or the escapist fantasy of Barbie's. The fact that many cinemas have booked out double features of the two suggests that viewers are eager to explore both ends of the cinematic spectrum. That's all for this week with The Economist Unpacked. For more groundbreaking journalism, please visit theeconomist.com and get a subscription. Until next week, stay curious and keep questioning.